People in Des Moines will vote for a new mayor later this year. While we're 9 months from the elections, candidates are already announcing their runs. One of those is Foote, a community organizer and activist living in the Drake neighborhood. They share what issues matter to them and their decision to run for the city's highest office. I am joined now by Foote. They are a candidate running to be the next mayor of Des Moines. Denver, thank you so much for giving us some time with us.
Yes, thank you.
Well, just to start, so that people can really get to know you, tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of your background and what brings you here, to Des Moines.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Iowa, northern Iowa. I grew up in Clear Lake, Iowa, a majority white town. I was raised by two second-generation parents from the Philippines and Mexico. My family was working poor. We didn't have central air. We didn't have a really nice house. Our ceiling was falling in some places. And I lost my mother at a young age due to her alcoholism from the result of trauma of being an Indigenous woman in rural Iowa. Clear Lake is a town known for their tourism, known going to school. I was surrounded by people whose families owned businesses that had nice houses, and here I felt like a transplant somewhere I grew up. I grew up at a young age wanting to have a different vision for people, but I never knew what to do. I had a lot of turmoil inside of me. I was fighting depression. I was juggling multiple jobs because I didn't really have a lot of parental support after my mother passed away. And I randomly got a call from my tia Sue, and she bought a house here in Des Moines. She said, "I have a spare bedroom. I know it's been your dream since elementary school to become a hairdresser. Why don't you move down here? You don't have to pay rent." And I literally felt like it was such a miracle, right? I put my 2 weeks in the next day and I moved to Des Moines. And why did I move to Des Moines? It's kind of sort of like, why did my grandparents come to America? Is to have this dream of care, of systems that will support them, to be able to have a house, to be able to have a family. But they didn't really experience that. They experienced harassment by police officers. They experienced racism, and they experienced that the American dream is almost impossible to obtain. And I moved to Des Moines with those hopes. And I started organizing with Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement. And I kind of realized that my experiences were not singular. So, yeah, I'm talking about stuff, not why I came to Des Moines now.
Oh, you're fine. And I guess that's a perfect segue, because it goes into, not only why you're here in Des Moines, but why we're here today. Why would you want to throw your name in the hat for a position, of mayor here in the city? What led you to that decision?
Yeah, so as a community organizer and as somebody who has always cared deeply for community and always cared deeply about transforming the current system that we have, I ask myself, where do I best fit my community? And I have been organizing so long. I have been on the front lines. I have heard so many stories. And I believe the mayoral position is somewhere where I can best suit my community. It has become clear last year during the election cycle that we need to protect each other locally. We need to create Des Moines into a safe haven so people like me, people who have had the experiences as I did, working class, Black, brown, Indigenous, queer folks, they can feel safe here, that they want to move here.
And, going off on that, if you were to be elected, talk to me about some of those changes that you would like to implement, some things that you would like to see, some of really what sticks out to you and what you'd want people to know about your platform and kind of what's on the top of your list.
Yeah, accessibility is extremely important. We need to build better transit infrastructure here in Des Moines. It is impossible to get to and fro places if you do not own a car. We have multiple parking lots in Des Moines that need to be utilized into housing. We need to take on the houselessness crisis. I have been out to those camps and talked to people firsthand, and their experiences are not invalid. They deserve a right. We cannot keep pushing them to the streets. We need houseless centers that are accepting and are willing to work with people, that are not based in religion. We need to take on the climate change locally. The climate is rapidly deteriorating, and we need to protect it locally. And how do I see that happening is by creating green jobs, is by rebuilding the infrastructure, it's by rematriating the land, which is extremely important to me as an Indigenous person. And I see how are we going to get these systems of care that our communities needs. It's by looking extremely closely at the Des Moines budget, right? We need more community input. We need to meet people where they're at. We need to ask them, what do you need and how are we going to get there? And the fact is, there is a trend every year that they do the budget that these systems of care are continuously getting defunded, and the police Des Moines department makes up almost 40% of the budget. A majority of that goes to patrolling. Patrolling is a response to crime. It does not stop it. And we need to build systems where we do not rely on these responses of to respond to violence with violence. We need to create systems that people can have growing up and to rely on, so that they don't feel like they need to go to that extent.
And going off on that, looking at some of the platforms that you had laid out, or the items you laid out in your platform, I think one of that was kind of making policing more public. So talk to me about what that looks like to you, and what you think that could accomplish here in the city.
I think making policing more public is a human right. I believe we need to know where they're at. We cannot have unmarked police cars, because they only have unmarked police cars is to respond to violence. It does not stop it. We need to have no more police officers dressed in civilian clothing. That is something that I have found as a community organizer, as somebody who has organized protests in the city of Des Moines, is that police officers dress in civilian clothing and they aren't actually there to protect anyone. They're there to find violence and respond to it. We need to make it publicly known how much funding the Des Moines Police Department gets and what it goes to. And it goes to acts of violence on our community members.
And it's my understanding too, that, and you talk about this kind of in your announcement, that you've had an experience with the police. Talk to me about that and kind of what you believe that gives you, as you kind of look to make changes in the city.
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned that I was dealing with a lot of turmoil about where I come from and not knowing how to deal with those emotions. It was during the 2020 protests when George Floyd passed away that I felt this wave inside of me, this emotions, and that's when it really, really, really clicked for me that my experiences with police growing up and my experiences as somebody on the poverty line and from a working poor family is not alone, that I wasn't alone in this. And I remember going to the protests and hearing people speak and being so touched and moved, and just grieving together. And what did the city do in response to this community grieving, to this community having emotions? They responded with violence. They responded with chemical warfare that is even banned in other countries. And that is not how you respond to a community that is grieving. You're supposed to listen to your community. And after being attacked by 2 police officers with their batons, I went through a lot of emotional distress after that. And it was really hard for me to get through that. And I started becoming more aware of the stories and how deep they get. And I was aware that they like deserved better. I had to use my experiences and my story to find power within those things, to find power within my stories and my experiences so I could help other people. Because some people aren't able to speak up. Some people aren't able to find that within themselves. And that's what motivated me, and that's what motivated me to be a community organizer, is hearing other people's stories.
And switching gears, I know you mentioned, wanting to fight climate change, doing that locally, and I think if I understand, looking at some of those issues, is that something you want to do is expand more community gardens and to really look, at tackling food deserts. So talk to me about what that could look like in the city and the issues that you see already existing.
I see that we rely heavily on corporations in Des Moines, and we need to rely more on our community, because that is how we fund our communities. It's not giving it to people who are making record-breaking profits, but their employees are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. Des Moines has tarnished their relationship with multiple community farms here in Des Moines, the ones that are in Riverbend or on the south side, where we have no access to good, healthy, actual produce. It's important that children are able to experience good, proper produce. And I believe that food is part of accessibility. It helps rematriate the soil, and that's, yeah.
Well, and I guess too, obviously we've talked about a lot of things that you would like to see worked on, change within the city, but what do you see going well in Des Moines, and what makes you, proud of the city, or really wanting to stand and be a representative for the city and take something like this on and champion the city?
Yeah, I talk about community a lot, but that's one of the reasons why I love Des Moines, is the community here. When I was going through dealing with the police brutality I experienced, when I was going through a lot of that turmoil, it was my community that lifted me up. It was my community that made sure I had resources and had food and was able to take care of myself. And I see community is the strongest point, the strongest pillar of our city. We need to build those connections so we don't have to rely on systems in place that are corrupt.
And I guess kind of as a closeout, kind of the elevator pitch, I mean, if you wanted people to walk away from this interview with one thing, why should they consider you as their candidate and someone they should vote for
If
mayor?
you see a majority of our current council, they all have one thing in common, most of them, is that they are white, they come from a background with money, some of their families own businesses, and I don't come from any of that. I come from the working class. I come from a person of color, a queer person, and I want to represent the youth, because we need to have representation that actually represents and mirrors the communities that are the most oppressed.
Well, Denver, thank you so much for giving up some time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.